Hi, everybody, and welcome to this stream. We are going to talk a little bit about the new layout that Ignition has gained. And in case you don't know Ignition, that is the name of the default error page in Laravel. Now, before we start, I'd like to know if you can hear me correct, if you can see me correct, because in the previous stream there were some problems. So I hope that somebody can now let me know that everything is going smoothly. So we'll wait a little bit on confirmation for that. Let me check the comments here. I see a lot of hand claps and virtual hugs and hellos. So it very much pleases me that you're all here. I hope that you like what you are going to see. I do hope that you can all hear and see me correctly. Nobody's letting me know. All fine, it's fine, all works perfect. Okay, then we are good to go. Thanks for letting me know. Let me share my screen with you. So we are going to talk about the new Ignition page, and you'll find it in this repository. You see that we don't have a stable release just yet, but I'm going to tag the stable version at the end of this stream. So that's very exciting, as our team has worked very hard to getting this package ready. But before I dive into the new layout, I want to tell you a little bit about the history of Ignition and how errors are displayed in the Laravel project. If you've been around for Laravel for quite some time, then you probably remember this screen, the whoops error handler. I think this one was introduced maybe in the final versions of Laravel 4 or maybe even Laravel 5. And at the time, it was like the best error page that PHP in general had. It's still a very nice one, and I think it's being used a lot. Yeah, 3 million downloads a month, so people very much like this. And one of the benefits is that this error page is framework agnostic, so it works everywhere. But one of the downsides is also that it's framework agnostic, because it doesn't do anything Laravel specific. If you want to see like information on your route or something, it won't be displayed in Whoops, as it doesn't know that. Also, Whoops only displays exceptions, but it doesn't give you a hint on how you should solve that exception, because it doesn't know Laravel. It can't do any introspection on that. Now, this isn't a new idea to replace Whoops with something Laravel specific. Our team has thought about this a couple of years ago. A couple of years ago, we launched Flare, which is an exception tracker for Laravel applications. And when we set out building Flare, our goal was to make the easiest exception tracker and the best exception tracker for Laravel applications. And one of the things that we want to do is that the user interface of our exception tracker should be very close to what you see in Laravel itself if you throw an exception. So when we created Flare, we decided to build Laravel's error page together with it. So we did that in one go. And you probably know how the current Ignition looks like. It's like this one. So you have this big error card, and you have these tabs where you can go through. You can even share your error. I'm going to demo that later. And we have the solutions here. And we will take a look at one of the errors in Flare. Then you can see that the layout is very similar. So we're not in a Laravel application. This is Flare. So this is a SaaS application that can help you track exceptions in production. And this is one of the errors that I had on my personal blog. So this is all the old layout. And like I said, Flare was launched, I think, 2 or 3 years ago. And there's a universal truth, and that is everything changes. So what is fashionable on the internet changes, what we like in layouts changes, fashion changes. So we thought that it was time to give the whole of Flare a new look. And because we wanted to keep Flare similar with Ignition, we had to redesign the whole of Ignition as well, because we think we can do a better job than that we did 2 or 3 years ago. That is the history of Ignition. So why are we redesigning Ignition right now? Because we want to redesign Flare, and we thought Laravel 9 is the perfect point to include this new version of Ignition. Now I'm going to show you Ignition in a bit. Flare isn't really ready yet. We're working hard behind the scenes to get the new layout of Ignition into Flare, but we'll only launch that in a couple of weeks. We needed a little bit more time. But because Laravel 9 will launch, we are going to launch the new Ignition already. And let me show you. Oh, I have some output here. I'm going to install Laravel 9, and I'm going to show you that the new Ignition page is there by default. So I can create a Laravel 9 application at the moment of speaking with the dev flag. And I hope it works, because earlier today a little bug was introduced, but if it's still there, I know how to fix it. Yeah, the bug is still there. So I can go to Laravel 9 here. Oh, didn't I use Laravel 9 here? Just Laravel. Okay, Laravel. Let's open up PHP Storm, and I'm going to fix the dependency. So this is the tagged version that works for sure. So I'm not going to use Laravel 9 that branch alias, but I'm going to use this specific version. Hopefully in a couple of hours you don't need to do this anymore. This is because I was a little bit unlucky and there was an error. Oh, and I still get the error. Composer update, of course. Let's do that. Composer update. Like that. So we get another version of the framework that hopefully will work. Yeah, we got no errors here. So let's open this in Valet. And you can immediately see the new Ignition error page. So you probably know this one. This is the old one. And you can see that, that this is the new one. It has a totally refreshed layout. It looks a little bit more modern to my eyes. You can see that we have some extra menu items. This has been renewed, and this as well. So this is here by default in Laravel 9. We're going to explore this page in a bit. I want to also show you that you can also install the new Ignition in Laravel 8. So let's create a new Laravel application. So new, and I'm going to call this one Laravel 8 without a dash maybe. New Laravel 8, like that. And there should be no errors here. So I'm going to go to Laravel 8 here. And let's open this up in the browser. And we can see that there's the default page here. Let's maybe throw an exception here. I'm just going to remove this key here. Like that. Let's write the environment file. Let's refresh. And you can see that we have the old Ignition version here. Let's close this up. And now let's install the new version of Ignition in this Laravel 8 application. So you can do that by replacing the facade Ignition. And facade is our old vendor name, but we're not going to use that one anymore. We're just going to use Spatie because more people probably know Spatie. And we're going to use Laravel Ignition. I want to have version 1. I can already use version 1. because I've set up a branch alias. That's something that package creators know how to do. So you can use a seemingly stable release without having actually released a stable version. So this will actually pull in the dev main branch. So let's do composer update. And this is basically all you need to do to get the new ignition in your Laravel 8 application. So if I refresh new, we can see that we have the new ignition here in Laravel 8 as well. I should say that the minimum required PHP version for the new ignition is PHP 8. If you have a lower PHP version, then you should still stick to the facade ignition, so the old error page. Okay, I've already prepared some stuff in the in my own in the source code of my own blog. So I'm going to do some stuff here. So I've prepared here a little ignition branch with some demos. I see here that Mo commented that it's a really nice design. Thanks for saying that. I hope others watching this will also like it. I don't need these tabs anymore, so I'm going to close them. And let's maybe throw a little exception. So let's do throw new exception. Computer says no, like that. Let's refresh. So we see the error page, so we can start exploring some things again. So let's take a look at the menu here first and how this page is structured. And I'm going to keep old ignition here nearby. So in the old ignition, you just had the stack trace here. And if you want to see the rest, then you had to click to see all the other things. And some of these things were empty, but we still displayed them for consistency. But in the new ignition, we do that a little bit different. So we have still an error card and the stack trace on top here, but without clicking, you can either just click here to go down, or maybe just scroll down, and here you see all the information about the request. You can see that this menu is sticky, so you can just scroll through without clicking to see everything here. I also want to get your attention to, maybe I was fast, you didn't see it immediately, but I want to bring your attention to this very nice two-step animation if you scroll down. So if you scroll down a little bit, then you see that this gets sticky, and this is now a menu. But something that was a little bit wrong in the old version of Ignition, I don't know if I can display it here. Yeah, I can. So if you scroll down here, you don't see the exception message anymore. And we think that's a little bit bad, because as you're scrolling through or going through these other frames, you might want to see the exception again. And here you have to scroll up again. Now let's take a look what happens in the new exception. If I scroll a little bit more down, isn't that beautiful? Then we just set the exception here and it always stays visible. And if you go up again, then it's again gone. So I think this is a really beautiful animation that's not only beautiful, but also very functional, because you likely want to have this. And also if you click it, then you go back to the top. You can also click context here to go immediately to the bottom, so you can see everything that we have of information surrounding this exception. Okay, let's maybe, before we head again down, explore the other items here a bit. So we have here sharing functionality, which is probably something that you're familiar with if you're already using the old Ignition. So the sharing functionality is there for if you want to let another person help you with a certain exception. Then you can create a share, and you can choose if you only want to send in the stack, the context or the debugging information. Debugging information that are all the dumps and queries and some other things that you're your request has made. So I'm going to just choose everything and create a share. And then here we get a public share link that you can copy and visit. And here is the same exception, but then on Flare, and you can send this URL to anyone. You can also just visit this page if you want. I'll just put it in the comments so you can take a look. There's also here a share admin link, and the only difference is if you visit this one, then you can still delete the share. So if you want to, if you have shared this and you don't want to be this on our systems anymore, you can delete it. If you forget your admin link, you can also mail us. Now, we have here that 2-link system with an admin link. In all honesty, we think we can make this simpler, and we have a couple of ideas on this that we are going to implement soon. And probably we're also going to change that we only keep your exception there for a limited time. So even if you don't do anything, your exception will get scrubbed from our system. Okay, let's maybe move a little bit on. This is a new addition. So we have here a link to the documentation, which I think is very, very handy. If I click here, then you can see that we go to the Laravel 8 docs, because I'm now in the Laravel 8 application. Of course, this documentation link, when you are in a Laravel 9 application, will go to the Laravel 9 docs. But we didn't stop there with only having a link to the main docs. Let's maybe create another kind of exception. So where's my blog? It is, did I close it? This is the Laravel 8 application. This is freak.dev. Let's maybe do another kind of error. So let's perhaps do something with collection. And I'm going to make a mistake with calling something from the collection. So of course, this doesn't exist. Let's refresh our error page and see what happens. You can see that we already detected that you're using a wrong method name, and there's a method name that looks very similar and does exist. So this is a solution that was also already there in the previous version of Ignition. But you can see here that we now have a red dot on the documentation here. And that red dot signifies that we actually found a very specific documentation page that will help you with this result. And if I click here now, then you can see that we go to all available methods of the collection, so you can hunt down and find documentation on the method name that you wanted to call. I think this will be like a real time saver. I'm going to show you some of the source code now, so you can see how that works behind the scenes, because I hope that people will help us improve how we detect this. So if I go to Laravel Ignition, like that. So this is the source code of the Laravel specific version of Ignition. We also have a framework agnostic version. I'm going to talk about that too. If I go to the, I think it's Laravel documentation link finder. Yeah, we also have a test for that. I'm already in the right class. So this is the Laravel documentation link finder, and internally this class gets the trouble, so the exception that is occurring, and it will try to take a look at the message, and if it finds that, like in the message collection, the collection class is mentioned, then it's probably something about the collections, and we go to that specific error page. We can also try to determine the type of the trouble, and here we're just going to take a look at what the word after illuminate is. And if it is any of these words, auth, broadcasting, container, and so on, then we're going to go to those specific pages. Now, I think that this is already pretty neat, but I hope that with a little bit of help from the community, we get some nice, very specific documentation links here as well, so we can make this even better. Cool. Let's go to the next thing in the menu bar. So this is also, these features all already existed in the old Ignition, but we've made them easier to customize. So here you can choose which editor that you're using. I'm using PHP Storm. And you can also choose the theme that you're using. Now, first, the editor. Where are we using that for? Well, we're using that for if you click on any of, or if you hover over any of the links here in the stack trace, you get this pencil icon. And because we know which editor you're using, we can build up a link to that points to your editor, to that file. So if I want to go to this line in my editor, I can click it. I should allow it. And then I go immediately to that line. This also works for other things in the stack frame. So let's click here with that return new pipeline, go to phpstorm.app, and I'm immediately my IDE in the right class here. So that is why you can choose an editor here. Now, the cool thing here is that in the previous version of Ignition, this information was being modified in a config file in your Laravel application itself, or some file that you need to create yourself on the file system. If you click Save Settings here, then we will actually create this file for you. So you don't have to do that anymore. So you can just save your preferences right from Ignition itself, which I think is a nice touch. Now, this is the light theme, and I think it is beautiful. I think light themes are the way to go because it's scientifically proven that it is better for your eyes. Many programmers don't believe that, but it is really the case. But we can't ignore that a lot of people just like dark mode. So we also have a dark mode here. And you can see here that we have a little sun here, and I'm going to click this now, and I hope that this will show in the streaming. I hope that this won't get compressed, but we actually have a very cool little animation when we go from light to dark. So the sun will fade and will go down, and the moon will come up. Let's take a look. Up. And now we are in dark mode. How cool is that? So everything looks pretty neat in dark mode as well. And I can save this. And if I refresh the page, then you can see that we're immediately in dark mode because Ignition knows it should render that. Now, there are also some people that just want to rely on the OS behavior. So we also have that. So let's do auto mode, and let's change the theme of my Mac here. So I'm going to use dark mode system-wide. And now you can see that it just follows my OS preference. So that's how that works. And I think it's pretty neat that you don't have to create that file anymore. I'm always going to use light, so I'm going to use that in the preferences. Okay, let's take a look at the error card itself here. You can see here that it is pretty simple, like it was in old Ignition. Is this old Ignition? This is Flare, don't need that. Old Ignition is in the last tab. Yeah, so it is very simple here. As you can see, we even simplified it even more. We displayed the Ignition logo here and the path, and also the URL here, but actually you don't need these pieces of information because you likely know where you're working, and the URL is the URL where you're actually on now. So you don't need that information here. We did retain the type of exception here, and we also added in the PHP and Laravel versions. We know by experience that a lot of people experience errors because they think they are on a certain PHP version, but actually they are not. And here they can immediately notice, hey, I'm on the version that I expect. I can also already tell you about something that we're adding here. For those that know PHP well, they know that an exception can contain another exception. So you can have like nested exceptions. Right now, we are only displaying the topmost exceptions, but when we push a little bit through with our plan, we will be able to show all exceptions that exception contains as well. And then this will become a little drop down where you can choose which of the exceptions that you want to see. Okay, here on the right hand, we have those solutions. And of course, you can close them as well if you don't want them. And if you refresh, that's a little bug that I should fix, I think. Then you shouldn't see them at all. Then you only have like this little hint here. Of course, those solutions, they can still be runnable. Let's maybe do an example by just removing the environment key here. If I refresh here, we get another exception, and you can see here that we can push this button to generate our application key. The solution was executed successfully. Let's refresh, and now we're back in our code where we had this little error. Okay, that's everything for the top section here. So next we have the stack trace, which has also been redesigned, and we have a button here now to also show all of the vendor frames. So by default, we only show the frames in your application because it's likely that you want to know where in your application this error will occur. And if you're interested in like the internal frames of the framework, you can either expand them all or expand a group here, and you can see that this controller was called in this dispatch method, in this run controller, and so on. I got another cool thing I want to show. I know again. So you can see here that we colorize this output. So you can see it's beautifully highlighted. We use highlight.js behind the screens for this because it's the fastest way of highlighting this, and it yields some pretty good results. And we went the extra mile there. And let me show you that. So if you have an error inside of a view, let's for instance do links here with an extra S, and then refresh. It goes a little bit slow. And this is not the one that I was looking for. I want to be here. I think this is also a little bug that I got pointed here. I'll check that out after the stream. So normally you would have been pointed to this one, and you can see that we highlight blade code as well. So the first thing to notice is that we show you the uncompiled blade code. So internally, Laravel did use a compiled blade view, but you probably don't want to see this all decompiled. You want to see your view, and we make that happen. And we also colorize the blade output. And this might seem as something very easy to do, but there actually wasn't a language file for blade in highlight.js. So we had to create that ourselves too. So I think if I remember the URL, highlight.js blade. So my colleague Alex, he took the time to create a language file for highlight.js, so we can highlight blade code here as well, which I thought is pretty cool. Okay, let's go a little bit down here, and here you can see all the context information. Wait, I'm going to get my original exception back. So throw new exception. Computer says no. Who knows where that comes from? Computer says no. Do you know what's the reference there? Let's refresh here. Okay. Okay, so here we are at the context section. So we passed stack, we're now in context. And here you can see the entire information about the request. And first up here is a curl representation of the request that was happening. Now for a GET request, you probably won't need this, as for a GET request you can just refresh your browser, but with a POST request it can be very handy to use this to just retry what you just did. So let me show you something neat here. I should go to my blog here, cdfreek.dev, and let's execute that curl thing. And you can see here that in my console, let me make it a little bit bigger, that you see the exception here in your console as well. So here you can see computer says no. Here you can see the entire stack trace here. And also if you, let me do that again. If you scroll up, it's a lot, it seems. It's a big page. Don't I get my scroll thing here? I don't have my scroll bar here, but let me try to get it so I can easily scroll up. Is this too big? Ah, here it is. Okay, so if I scroll to the top, then you can see that exception again right here in your terminal. That works because inside of the HTML of Ignition, we also show you the exact error as well. So you can see it even if you're not using a regular browser, then Ignition will help you seeing what went wrong here. So that's this request. You can also see the headers here, beautifully laid out. And I want to show you something here, but I can't because my page is a little bit too wide. We have a nice little detail as well. You can see here that we don't have enough room here to display this name here, but we still retain our layout here. If you want to see the whole header, you can just click on it and then you can see the rest. It's a little bit silly with just 3 characters missing, but for long names it can be very nice that this isn't like jumping around the whole time. There's also a copy button here, so you can copy these values if you want to. Okay, here you can see the rest of the information. You can see, because we are a Laravel specific error page, that we can add Laravel specific things here. So we know the entire route here. We have some Git information here. And this is also a nice detail. Instead of just displaying 0 and 1 for booleans, we took the extra effort of having a false and a true here. Okay, let me show you some other things. We have now 3 tabs here, but there's actually also a 4th one, but we only display it when it's necessary. So let's go back to my application and perform the dump. Perform a dump here. So hi everybody, like that. And let's refresh and see what happens. So if I refresh now, and let's say that we're on the top of the page here, then you can see that there is a new item debug here. And we even have like a red dot here to grab your attention. And if we click this or scroll down, then you can see that there is a new dump section here where all the dumps that you made before this exception was thrown are shown. So here you can see them all, and also if you click this, you go back to PHP Storm where that is happening. I see here in the corner of my eye that has asks here if the Git stuff is new. The Git stuff isn't new, that was already there. Let me explain it. So we see in by looking at your .git directory that you have unstaged changes, and we can even point you to the latest commit that you did. So if you click this button, then you go to GitHub to the latest commit that you did, and you can see that I added the route name here using a new package, which I will talk about in a future session to this route. Let's go back to Ignition. So yeah, this is here the dump, and if there are more dumps, then we show them there as well, of course. Let's go back here, and let's throw that exception after we've made a query there, and let's refresh again. And if I take a look now, then you can see that we have another tab. This is not tab 1 and tab 2. This is, there's one item in here and there are 2 items in here. And if I go to queries, then I can see all the queries that my application made up until it crashed. You can even see how long that those queries took. And of course, we also have like the copy button here to copy it. And we even took the effort of auto-formatting it for you. There seems to be like a little visual bug here, which I'll also fix after this stream. So yeah, this is like the new error page in Laravel. I really hope that you will like using this. I've been using it now for I think 2 weeks or something, and yeah, I think it really makes it a little bit more clear. Okay, there are 2 things that I want to do in the stream, and that is show you the framework agnostic version and also do a little bit of a code dive. Also, if you like what you're seeing, let me know in the comments. This is really helpful for both my team and myself. Positive comments and positive vibes are really what keeps us going. And I'm really looking forward to seeing like this error page in tutorials and into streams as people hopefully not make too much errors, but I'm looking forward to seeing like the first stream where we can see Ignition being used in the wild. Okay, let's jump to the framework agnostic version of Ignition. So what I've now shown you is actually this package, Laravel Ignition, which is the Laravel specific version. If we take a look at composer.json, then you can see that it depends on the framework agnostic version. So in the previous version of Ignition, there was no framework agnostic version. It was only Laravel specific. But by splitting it into a framework agnostic version and a Laravel version, the code base became much, much cleaner because there was much less magic needed. And if you work on Laravel Ignition, then you can just work on the Laravel specific bits while you get like a nice foundation with Ignition. And where you, and if we work on Ignition, then we don't get bogged down by Laravel specific details. This is just, the core of how Ignition works. Now, this can be installed now in any PHP project. So if you have a framework agnostic project, Ignition will work for you. I haven't tested this because I'm really not that proficient with Symfony, but I think that if you throw this in a Symfony application, then Symfony will show you Ignition as well. Maybe somebody of you who already knows Symfony can try this out and let me know. So what I want to do is just show you that this actually works. So I'm going to copy this bit of code. I'm going to create a new directory called Ignition will already exist. Ignition test or something. Ignition test. Let's go to Ignition test. Let's maybe touch a file index.php that I can use. And let's open it up in PHP Store. So there's an index.php here. I can just add this here. And let's maybe also require spaCy ignition. So this is spaCy ignition. What's the problem here? No composer JSON present. Should I already touch it? Composer JSON, maybe then. What is this? Doesn't contain valid JSON. Okay, let's do the simplest JSON. Yeah, you can see that I haven't rehearsed this part. What is wrong now? Cannot find. I made a typo. You're probably all screaming at me. Yeah, so now this works. We have spaCy ignition here. And you can see if this auto completes here that this namespace will exist. Yeah, we just include our autoloader and then we register ignition. Now let's see if this will actually work in the browser. I hope that Valet will know that my index.php is there. Let's take a look. And it doesn't. I'm not getting anything because I'm not throwing an exception. So this is actually a good test. Okay, throw new exception. Hi there. Let's do something friendly. Let's refresh. And yeah, now you can see that the ignition works fully in a framework agnostic version. So we don't have a Laravel version here, but you can see that we have all the information here. You can even make use of solutions as well. So solutions are those green error cards. So let's do that. So I'm going to add a class here, which is a custom exception that implements provide solution, which is a contract that's provided by Ignition itself. So you can use this to hint that, hey, we know how to solve this exception. And this is the solution itself. Let me paste it and explain it a little bit more. What's the problem here? Switch to PHP 7. Yeah, okay, good. This should probably be on the top, like that. Maybe all the rest. Probably I already have this import. Yeah. Okay, so this is the exception itself. And it says that the solution should be this one, custom solution. And custom solution is a class of its own, which has a title, a description, and it can also have a link. And let's try just throwing that custom exception there. So it's this one, custom exception, like that. Must be exception of throwable. This should be extends exception probably, like that. Yeah. And let's refresh now. And now you can see that we have a solution in a framework agnostic version of Ignition, which I think is pretty cool. Okay. Did I see the Laravel docs link at the top even when not using Laravel? Yeah, that's indeed something that we still need to fix. We're actually already on that in the latest version. I think it is already removed, and you don't see this docs link, and then this little icon is removed. Okay, so that's this. Yeah, I hope that people not on Laravel or non-Laravel PHP friends will like this as well. Of course, this sharing functionality now also works in non-Laravel applications. Okay, we're already some time in, but I did want to do a little bit of a code dive with you. Just a minimal code dive of a couple of minutes, so you know how we can actually just catch those exceptions from just anywhere. Let's open up Ignition here and go to its base class. So that's this one. So if we go back to spaCy Ignition, then you can see that the only thing that we need to do to make Ignition work is to call this ignition make register, and then any exception, no matter where in your application, will actually be called. Okay, let's take a look at how we do that. So this is that ignition class that you're calling. And let's go to the register method. Nothing to commit, that's the wrong hotkey. It's this one. Let's go to the register method. So this is where the magic is starting. This is like this is probably like code that you don't or functions that you don't use every day. I think you only need to do this if you want to have some special behavior. So what we're first doing here is making sure that no errors are actually being displayed. So if PHP sees an error and wants to display some error information, we say, no, PHP, we are going to do that. You don't need to do this. So that's why we have this line. Then we are saying, like, hey, PHP, if you ever encounter an error, just let us handle it. Just call render error on this class and let us handle it. And this is for like errors, for like the throwables, and this is the one for regular exceptions. But we actually do more or less the same for both. We need to prepare this a little bit more, and here we're just going to render it. Okay, let's go to one of these functions. So whenever an exception or an error occurs in your application, we are going to execute this. So what we are going to do first is take a look if Flare is configured. So Ignition has a built-in client to communicate with Flare. And this is because this is the way how exceptions get sent to Flare whenever you share them. And if you're a customer of Flare itself, then we also use this to send your production exceptions to our service. So the first thing that we do is to create a report of the throwable. And a report is basically some kind of big DTO kind of class where we just transform the throwable to a structure that we know and that we can use to send to Flare itself. So we are going to convert exceptions. We are going to add a tracking UID. We're going to do some preparation stuff so we can easily just send it through. Then we are going to take a look if we should actually display this exception. So we have like a manual flag for this, but we also have a check in which environment that you are. And if you're in a production environment, then we're not going to render this exception. Now, if you're in the framework agnostic version of Ignition, then you need to set this flag yourself. But of course, in the Laravel specific version of Ignition, we are going to set this for you depending on the app environment of your Laravel application. So if we should display that error and we're not in a production environment, then we are going to render it. And here we basically have a sort of rendering template system, a poor man's rendering system. We have an error page view model where we're going to do some transformations. So here is actually that little string at the bottom and the top of Ignition where you can see the hold trace and the exception itself. So this is what's being displayed in the HTML, what you saw earlier. That's being prepared here. You can also see that we prepare the title of the page here and so on. Let's head back. So that's being done in that error page view model. And then we pass that view model to our render. And our renderer is basically nothing more than a source file, a PHP source file. Let's go back. That we pass all the data that we prepared, and we're just going to include that which will display it in the browser. Now, I'm not going to go too deep on it because we're already a little bit further. What happens here in this view is that all the data we prepared, we set that on a data object on the window, because as you see here, there's not too much HTML here, because the entire because the entire ignition page is actually being rendered by JavaScript, and it's actually being rendered by a small React application. So with ignition installed, we basically brought React to each and every Laravel 9 application. But rest assured, this page is not going to bother your normal application. This JavaScript will only get loaded whenever an error is displayed and there's nothing displayed of your application itself. Okay, let's go back to ignition. Yeah, it's here. So we were in the register, like that. We were in our error handler, so render the error. So we've rendered the exception. So that is what we are going to do. And then we are going to take a look if there's like a API token set to set things to Flare. Then we are going to report this to our service. So if you have an API token set, then we are going to do this. And that is basically everything there. On a high level there is to it. It's a lot of transforming that trouble to a structure that we know. I think that this is like a good overview. So let's head back to the browser. So I told you that we were going to tag ignition. We've seen a little couple of paper cuts here, like the Laravel logo being displayed, but I'm going to assume that this is already fixed in here, or we can fix it really fast. So I'm already going to tag this release. Before I do that, I see him, my colleague Alex here. I should mention that maybe because you see me presenting, you think, hey, Freek has done this all. What an amazing programmer! He can do it all. And the truth is, this couldn't be done without our team. And actually, some of my colleagues did a lot for this. So my colleague Willem made all of the design. So he made all of this look pretty. My colleague Alex, he did all of the front end. So he did all of the React application together with some assistance from my colleague Adriaan. Myself, I concentrated on the PHP packages, so I made a split between Ignition and Laravel Ignition, and I also got a lot of help from Alex to modernize some of the things, to leave some baggage from the old Ignition behind. And at some point, everybody in our team has contributed either by coding something or giving feedback to the designs of Willem or the work of the other colleagues. So Ignition really is a team effort. I should emphasize that. And it's also not only my team, but the entire community as well. Because in the previous version of Ignition, a lot of fixes were there and a lot of suggestions are in there that were suggested by the entire community. So this is really a team and community effort, and I'm really thankful for that. With that being said, let's tag this release like that. Stable release like that. Let's publish it, and now we have Ignition 1.0 here. I could also tag Laravel Ignition and also the underlying client, but I'm going to do that off stream, as me seeing do that 3 times in a row might be a little bit much. So yeah, there you have it. That is the new Ignition. Yeah, we worked for, I think, the first plans for Ignition were there, I think, maybe a year ago, when we said first, hey, don't you want to do like a redesign? Don't you think we can do this better? And I think the past half year, we really put things in motion to make this happen. I'm really glad that it will be in Laravel 9 by default. And yeah, know that you can install it in Laravel 8 as well. So yeah, that's everything that I got for you. I hope that you like it. I hope that you won't see this page too much, that you don't have too much errors. But if you do, and certainly for the first time, I hope that you like navigating it and using it to fix your error or exception. That's it from me. Thanks for watching, and until the next time, take care. Bye bye.